Hey guys, TommyBryson here. Welcome to my channel, guys. And by the way, as always, you're welcome here. However, though, this video right here is kind of scary because at some point, either a lot of you guys are part of the middle class right now, or for example, will be a part of the middle class, okay? And the whole idea is that at one point, every single one of you thought that $40,000 was a lot of money. Or for example, 120K was a lot of money. And to be a part of the middle class, that's all you need to make, between $40,000 to 120K. Now, the idea is, although this might sound like a lot of money, right? The idea is for a lot of middle class people, that is not enough money, to the point where the average person in America is living paycheck to paycheck. The average person in America also does not have $1,000 for an emergency. So what happens when you make 40K or $120,000 as a middle class person, but you miss a paycheck? Or for example, you get laid off? The answer is usually what comes next is going to be bankruptcy. To the point where just in 2020, for example, we had around 659,000 bankruptcies. Just in America, by the way. At least filing for bankruptcy, okay? You might say, Tommy, well, you must have forgotten, okay? 2020 was a pandemic. But no, if you remember correctly, bankruptcies were actually paused for a while. So in reality, in 2019, we had over 100K more bankruptcies. And in 2018, we had around 5,000 more bankruptcies. And then in 2017, we had even more. So the point was, the trend seems to be going down and down and down, but in reality, it is still around 700,000 bankruptcies every single year. And that is a lot. Meaning, a kid is more likely to experience a bankruptcy instead of a divorce with parents. Or you're more likely to have, for example, a bankruptcy than a heart attack. Or they're going to be, for example, more bankruptcies than there will be, for example, cancer diagnosis or whatever it is, okay? The point is, this video is scary because in reality, it means that, hey, making 40K or 120K is not going to be enough. Now, in reality, that's false. And I'll tell you why in this video. But the idea is the problem that basically there's not enough money to be made as a middle class, or for example, is a problem that basically, hey, maybe the problem is with the middle class themselves and the money they actually spend, okay? Is that going to be the problem? Now, if you guys are new here, I post videos every single day on money, finance, everything, solutions, by the way. So make sure to also subscribe and hit the bell to get notified so you don't miss a video every time I post a video every single day at 4 p.m. Now, the very first thing is, guys, okay, I was reading this book right here. It's called The Two Income Traps by Elizabeth Warren and Amelia Warren Taiji, I think her name is, okay? But the idea is, I read this book, which talks about bankruptcies and normal families and all this stuff, because by the way, it's not the people that are over there saying like, hey, I'm gonna spend all my money going to bankruptcy, but in reality, it's not them. It's also, for example, average Americans. I remember, for example, I knew someone that actually went through bankruptcies and she was devastated. On top of that, also, I read this book and it's called Stop Acting Rich by Thomas J. Stanley. And this book right here changed my whole perspective on money, who the real millionaires are, and what their habits actually are. So, perspective here. The first thing is, guys, I want to give you an example of what a bankruptcy looks like for an average person, an average individual, and why you might not want to be a part of the middle class as far as, for example, what their habits actually are and what their normal standard actually is. Now, I'll tell you a story, real story by the way, about the study done by Harvard Research. And they found this couple. Their name is Ruth and James, okay? And they went through a bankruptcy. But before that, Ruth is actually an accountant, okay? And before she married James, there was this other guy that she actually met up with. But in reality, he did not cut the deal, basically. So she was like, oh, I'm not going to do this here, okay? So she found James, a carpenter, and said, wow, look at his hands with the whole, like, calluses or whatever. He must be a hard worker. They met up. They spoke for a while. Eventually, they got married. Okay, awesome. Then they had their first kid. Now, what comes next, guys? Well, it means next, according to statistics, according to the norm in America, next you're supposed to buy a home. So they go ahead, they buy a home, okay? They have two incomes, everything is fine. Then they have, for example, a second baby, everything is fine also. They also have 2 cars, they have credit cards, everything is also going fine. Again, and by the way, Ruth is a trooper. Whenever she had, for example, a baby, she wasn't out of work, for example, for more than 4 to 6 weeks, and that's it. And by the way, I think it should be longer, okay? Because it's a tough job. However, the main point is that these people so far seem like average Americans, okay? They're married, they bought a house, they have some cars, they have some credit cards. That's about it, okay? Nothing crazy. They don't have a yacht, they don't have a Lamborghini, they don't have $1 million house, none of that stuff, okay? Everything seems normal. However, though, there are parts of the middle class. And what happened, for example, when one day James went into work, Carpenter, by the way, and the boss says, hey, James, we love you here. However, there's a competitor down the block doing better than us. So we're going to have to go ahead and make some cutbacks. And starting with you, today you're fired, okay? And you're actually laid off. That was the end of that. However, it meant that, for example, this couple built a lifestyle around two incomes. Now, James obviously tried to find a job, but no job that he could actually find could match his income from before. Meaning, a few months later, a month or 2 months later, they cannot pay their mortgage anymore. So they missed one payment, then a second payment. Before you know that, the parents stepped in and said, hey, we're going to lend you $4,500. On top of that, the brother-in-law said, hey, we're going to lend you $1,500. So overall, $6K. But before you know it again, the money was gone just like that, with some payments here, the payment on the house here. But again, they were late to the point where Ruth, the accountant, by the way, she had to park her car further from her job just so the car did not get repoed because she was afraid of that actually happening. So eventually, this is the scary part. It sounds like a very normal family, but as soon as one income got taken away, that was the end of that situation. Now, how does this story end? Well, one day James comes in the house. Ruth says, hey, come upstairs. We have to talk. And they talk about, hey, we have to go through bankruptcy. We have to do this. James does not say a word. He goes downstairs. He goes outside to his truck. He sits in the truck and he starts crying like a little baby. Okay, because it's that hurtful, it's that destroying, right? They go through bankruptcy, hopefully recovered. We don't know what happened after that. But the point is, the overall idea is that the middle class lifestyle, although it seems normal, it is a massive trap. Why? You have your first kid, you buy a home, that's a big mortgage, by the way. You buy some cars, that's some car payments, by the way. Student loan debt, that's some student loan payments, by the way, also. And then you maybe get a credit card, you swipe here, and your credit card, I've heard this a lot of times, by the way, my credit card is my emergency fund. The answer is that is not an emergency account, okay? That's the big problem here. And that's the scary thing when everyone out there usually is doing this. Now, Tommy, all right, that's the problem we found here in this book, right? A bankruptcy can be, for example, an average family just trying to live, for example, a basic lifestyle with some payments here and there. But you know what I learned is, in this book, the whole concept is different, okay? Because this book talks about, hey, who is the average millionaire? And the point is, I'll tell you exactly how to avoid this whole issue, how to make sure this does not end up being you, how to make sure you're not Ruth and James, but instead Billy and Cyrus or whatever your name actually are, okay? But the point is, what happens is, in this book, he talks about who the real millionaires actually are. And in reality, the real millionaires are not the actors, the rappers, the doctors, the lawyers. And it does not matter how much money you make, because in reality, guess what? The average millionaire has a 9-to-5 job and does not make as much money as you probably think he does, okay? Or she does. That's the point. Now, the first thing is, the average millionaire is not buying a Mercedes or a Lexus or a high-end car. No, they're buying Toyotas and Hondas. You know why? Not because they're cheap or because they don't worry about their health and safety. No, because basically, according to JD Power, okay, person that reviews all the cars, they say, hey, Toyotas and Hondas are basically the most reliable cars in America. That's why they buy them. On top of that, when they buy a home, the home does not cost more than $300,000. Usually it's between $200K and $300K. Why? Because they know for a fact having a home be half your income in payments, the answer is going to be a bad situation. And the excuse is always, hey, Tommy, but I want to live in this neighborhood because basically the schools are better here. This is better here, whatever it is. If you can't afford it, you just can't afford it yet. That's the whole concept there. On top of that, guys, the average millionaire does not live above or within their means. In reality, they live below their means. You know why? Because that way, when things go wrong, they're going to have extra money to take care of business. So overall, Tommy, if that is what the average millionaire does, and again, they have a 9-to-5 job, and they're also, for example, some of them are part of the middle class, what does this mean? It means basically, it's not the money you make. That's not the problem. The money is the game you play, the habits you make, and all that stuff. And by the way, guys, I learned this very early on. There's something called the contact theory, which basically means when you live around fancy people also, before you know it, you're fancy too. You spend money that you don't have to maintain a lifestyle. They call that keeping up with the Joneses. But again, it's all through contact. So that's why the average millionaire lives around people that basically motivate them to go ahead and also save more money, invest more money, and build up more wealth. But okay, Tommy, so what is the solution here? What do I do? Because by the way, I also drive a Corolla, a Toyota, and I'm still not rich, okay? So what's the solution here? The answer is, well, step by step here. First thing is, you gotta eliminate the idea that the first step after you have a baby or a graduate college is going to be buying a house. Usually, it's the worst idea, right? The idea that basically, hey, whenever you rent, you're wasting money. In reality, it's not that simple. You wanna go on Google and type in rent versus buy calculator, and it'll tell you basically at what point does buying become a good option. Because by the way, in the short term, renting is going to be cheaper than buying. So when you're first starting out, you want to basically rent. But Tommy, in my neighborhood, okay, if you pay 1K for rent and basically the mortgage is only 1K also. No, it's not that simple. You have insurance, taxes, and maintenance. If anything breaks in the property, you fix it. On this one, when you're renting, guess what? You don't fix anything. The landlord's problem, not your problem. That's why short-term renting is cheaper. Long-term though, buying is going to be cheaper than renting, obviously. However, what would I have done differently if I was Ruth and James, okay? First step is, when I have my first baby, that does not mean, hey, cue the lights, let's buy a house. No, you don't do that. Stay renting for a while. Step 1, or step 0 actually is, you want to make a budget. And we call this a bare bone budget. Well, I call it a bare bone budget, okay? Which basically means you only basically pay for the things you actually need and nothing else. What are those 4 things right there? You have housing/shelter. Housing/shelter cannot cost you more than 33% of your monthly income. That's the rule. Any more than that, basically, you're spending way too much money in housing. Tommy, but I live in Manhattan. Well, you ever heard about the Bronx and Brooklyn and Room, right? There's not an excuse, okay? On top of that, utilities, also groceries. But Tommy, I spend $300 on food every month. The answer is, and going out. The answer is no, stop. Spend between $100 to $200 per person and no more. That's the rule. You don't need to spend $400 and $500 on these fancy brands of organic food, which by the way, there are organic foods, basically off brands that are also organic, but they don't carry that, oh, $365 over at Whole Foods or whatever it is, okay? The prices over there are like 20 to 30% more expensive. So don't just don't shop there, okay? Lastly, transportation, your car. You're going to need a car to get from work to work, or from your home to your work, right? But the idea is you don't go out there and you buy a new car, and you don't buy a used car you can't afford. You buy a car you can afford for cash. Tommy, I can't afford that. The answer is, my fiance was riding around in a $500 Toyota, what is it? A Toyota Camry from 1991. That car costs around $500. You can save up that money and buy yourself a decent used vehicle, okay? It doesn't have to be that cheap, right? But the answer is you can buy a cheap vehicle for cash. Now, just for context here, because everyone says, Tommy, impossible. It's not possible, okay? The answer is this right here is called Car Guru. Am I sponsored? The answer is no. So this is basically an unbiased review here. If I click Toyota, Corolla, here's my zip code or whatever it is, click search. What does it show up? Hey, all these cars are $16,000, Tommy, 2018. I can't afford this, you crazy? And I can't pay cash for this, you crazy? The answer is I know. It's a lot of money. I get it. But the answer is also right now, the car market is going crazy. Used cars cost a lot of money. So what do? You go right here to this filter where it says price. You see price right here? And you scroll all the way down to around $5,000. Look at this. $3,000, $5,000. Can you afford this? The answer is most likely you can. If you're in the middle class, most likely you can. When you're first starting out, by the way. That's the point. You save up step by step, and then you buy, for example, a used car. That way, you don't have the average car payment in America of $300 to $600, which, by the way, is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane, okay? Not including insurance and gas and everything else with a car. That's what's crazy about it. It's almost like $500 on a car. It's crazy. So you buy a used vehicle. That way, you avoid the whole thing. And by the way, remember, according to JD Power, Toyotas and Hondas are the most reliable cars. So guess what? They're always going to turn on. Give it maintenance, take care of the car. They can run for 15, 20, 25 years. That way, you don't have to worry about it that much. Now, what would be step one once you have a proper budget? Well, step one is if you have any debt, you got to pay off your debt first before you go out there, start investing or considering buying a house. Now, you pay off all the debt here except the mortgage if you are already in a house. However, if your house is more than half your income, consider selling it, especially right now in the 2021 hot real estate market. Consider that, okay? Now, the idea is, how do you pay your debts? Well, first of all, save $1K for emergencies. That way, if anything goes wrong, you can pay for that and then go back to the plan, okay? $1K for emergencies. But paying your debts means, hey, pay your debts using the avalanche method, meaning you pay the debt that costs you the most money in APR. Usually it's going to be credit cards, okay? If you have a car here, usually sell the car, get rid of it, and buy a used car for cheap you can actually afford. That's the idea here. Once you're done with your debt, what do? I want to keep building credit, Tommy. I need credit, okay? Without credit, I can't buy nothing. No, without credit, you can't borrow anything. Usually, but not really, because you can still buy a house without credit by doing manual underwriting with the right provider, okay? However, if you want to maintain credit, you close all your accounts except 2 to 3 credit cards and you put a small bill on each of them. For example, Netflix, your phone bill, and Hulu. You pay them in full every single month automatically and you cut the credit cards and you never use them. I guarantee you one thing, you will grow your credit score, and on top of that, you will not go into debt ever again to a point where you can't manage it because all you have is literally like a small bill on each of them and they get paid every month, okay? That way you don't borrow any money whatsoever because basically you're not swiping every now and then. Now, step 2, once you're debt free, what is it? You want to start building an emergency account, a full-blown one, 3 to 6 months worth. And on top of that, you can invest 1 to 5% max, but the priority here is basically you want to build a full-blown emergency account. Now, for example, if before Ruth and James bought the house, if they had a 6-month emergency account, would that have happened? The answer is obviously it wouldn't have. They would have had some safety there to say, hey, we can pause, let's find a job, or do whatever we can here to get back on track. Because you have 6 months to figure things out. 6 months worth of expenses, okay? Usually, that's what I have. That's what I like. But some people, 3 months is going to be enough. For me, though, I like 6 months, okay? Now, once you're done with 6 months worth of emergencies and you've been investing like 1.5%, what do you do next? Well, step 3 is you want to build wealth and also consider buying your very first house or just saving up the money for it. Or if you already have one, paying it off. Now, you want to invest between 10 to 20% into your retirement account. Additionally, if you have a kid and you want to save, for example, for their 529 account for their college, save 5%, okay? So for Ruth, they can do 15% plus 5% for the kid, or 10% for retirement, 5% for the kid, whatever they actually want to do. But the rest of the money goes down for, hey, let's save up for a down payment on a home, 10 to 20%. Now, what are the rules when you're buying a home? In reality, again, the people buying these expensive homes are the middle class, okay? Not the really wealthy millionaires, okay? That's not what they do. But Tommy, Jeff Bezos bought a blah, 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 blah. The answer is, I'm not talking about Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett. No, I'm talking about the average millionaire. If you want to do that, this is what you want to do, okay? You want to buy a home within your means, okay? Actually below your means. That way, you're even better off. Now, what are the rules here? The home you buy cannot exceed 33% of your monthly income, 33%, okay? Including all the expenses, for example, the mortgage, PMI, taxes, insurance, HOA fee, maintenance. All those things included, it cannot exceed 33% of your monthly income. So, for example, if you make 50K a year, what does this mean for you? Well, 50K divided by 12, obviously you make around $4,000 a month, okay? multiplied by 0.33, it means, hey, you can buy a home where it does not exceed $1,375. Now, again, if you want to, what you can do is basically, you can save for the down payments, but also for maintenance. That way, you don't get to include that in your budget. Now, what does that buy you in America? Okay, let's go right here. And again, this home has to be bought, for example, on a 15-year mortgage. The goal is to own a home, not to finance one for the rest of your life. That is not what you want to do. The same thing with this whole car lease thing where you keep doing the same thing over and over again. You never really own anything. You switch phones every single year because, hey, I went to fancy. You got to stop that mentality, okay? Now, here is an entire budget right here. I use it a lot, guys. It's called, for example, Mortgage Calculator by Bankrate. It'll tell me exactly how much I can afford. And again, my budget right here is $1,375. Now, again, I'm getting a 15-year mortgage. I'm putting down 20%, and my payment cannot be above $1,375. Remember that. So I go here and I lower this to $1,375. So this is close enough, right? Meaning I can buy a home that cost me $210,000 with a down payment of $42,000. Yes, it's going to take a while for you to buy a house, but again, in the short term, renting is going to be cheaper. So take that time to save this money. Or for example, you can go ahead and put down 10%, but automatically, obviously, you're going to have to buy a cheaper house because basically you're not putting down that much money, around $20,000 cheaper or $30,000 cheaper, okay? That's the idea. But for context here, the idea is overall, if you buy this house using this entire formula, the house you buy is not going to be that expensive. Meaning, if James loses his job, like in the real example, real story here, Ruth and James, well, guess what? They have 6 months worth of emergencies. That way they can figure that out. But he also has time to go ahead and find money, either delivering pizzas or whatever it takes to make extra money to pay at least a third of what he used to make. That's the core concept there. On top of that, Ruth, the accountant, can say, hey, I'll pay for the housing costs. I'll pay for the utilities. You find money to pay for food and also for the gas and stuff like that. Is that possible? The answer is going to be yes. So they wouldn't be struggling that much. And on top of that, they still have a safety net of at least 6 months for the emergencies. So that way, they're good to go. Now, the cool thing about this math is this, okay? If you're investing 10, 20%, the answer is you should still have extra money to put down towards this mortgage and pay it off even faster. So if you say, hey, I'm going to pay an extra 15% towards this mortgage, guess what? You're going to finish on average in 8 to 10 years. So in 8 to 10 years, you're done with the house. You're done with the property. Now, obviously, guys, okay, let's be honest here. Once you're done with this property, you have no mortgage, you have no debts, you have an emergency account. On top of that, you have a great investment account also. It's been invested for a while. The answer is, what do you do with the money? Right? What do you do with the rest of the money? The answer is, well, you can keep investing 20%. Don't ever stop doing that. But on top of that, also, you can either spend it or give it away, have fun, do whatever you want. That's my plan, okay? That's what I do currently. However, is this plan normal? The answer is no. It isn't normal. And it's not for the average person either. So again, if you want to do this plan, it's going to take sacrifice and a lot of work. If you want to do the average plan for the average middle-class person, the answer is you'll buy a house when you're not ready. You'll buy a car when you're not ready. You'll do everything when you're not ready. You'll buy groceries when you can't afford them because you have a credit card, right? That's the whole concept. This plan basically says, hey, 8, 10, 12, 15 years, I'm done with everything. Their plan says, hey, I have 45 years in the workforce to take care of, and if I have a hiccup or I sneeze incorrectly or I break an ankle, I can't afford anything. Now, that's not what I want for you, and that's why this plan works so well. But overall, that is what you want to do if you want to avoid this whole problem. Again, so far we decided, hey, guess what? According to this book and all the facts and stats, guess what? Okay? The amount of money you make is not the problem. It's how much money you spend and what you do with that money, okay? And again, I'm going to finish reading this book because basically there are a lot more things for me to actually learn. So far, I'm somewhere there, but step by step, I'll be done with it, okay, guys? So read this book right here. Read this book right here first, though, to understand the full concept, okay, guys? I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching. And by the way, the goal here, if this video can help you not make these mistakes, well, my goal has been accomplished. Because by the way, I was also an accountant like Ruth was. And I was on my way to graduate college, yes, buy a home, yes, buy a car, yes, do all these things the normal way. But the normal way gets you average results, and average in America is ridiculous, okay? You don't want to be average in America. Now, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching. As always, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified. And if you want to call me and basically get help with debt or your finances or money for free, the answer is feel free to join me on my third channel called TommyBryson, where I take calls from Monday to Friday. Link down below. Subscribe over there. And last, if you want to DM me right here at TommyBryson on Instagram. And before I go, if you want to watch more content and basically more money stuff, here's a video right here. Click my face right here. See you guys tomorrow. And as always, peace.